If you're hearing this, you must be in dire need of a change. Same thing happened to me long ago. I'd lost sight of what mattered most in life. Real connections with other people and nature. So, I dropped everything and I moved to the place I truly belong. Best of all, the people of Pelican Town welcomed me in with open arms. Just like they did my grandfather, and just like they'll do for you. Hi there, I'm Scott D. Forsyth, professional voice actor and pop culture enthusiast. Today we're talking about one of my favorite genres in gaming, and how one dedicated fan revived the farming sim from trash to treasure. Maybe not so much a trash, but anyway, the game is Stardew Valley, and I'll be going over why I think it's best of all in this wonderful episode of Best of All. But first, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get right back to the show and some good old-fashioned farming. So, Stardew Valley is a game that was released in 2016. It was originally announced in 2012 by its one-person team, Eric Barone, also known as the Concerned Ape, who I will be referring to him as the Concerned Ape because that's the main name he goes by. Writing this script, I found out his name was Eric. I was like, whoa, I didn't know that. But the Concerned Ape had a love for the really famous video game series Harvest Moon, but felt that the series has been declining in quality since the late 90s, we'll say around the time the PlayStation 1 was out. So this led him on the path to start making Stardew Valley. And when I talk about the Concerned Ape making this game, I really mean it in the most literal sense. A lot of time when we talk about games being made by somebody or a movie being made by somebody, it takes a team, it takes a village. Not in the case of Stardew Valley. Concerned Ape does everything, the artwork, the coding, the music. Like, whenever you're playing and you're seeing the game, it's all made by one guy, and that's insane to me. There is a little bit of a caveat with that. He did receive backing from the publisher Chucklefish, who's probably most well known for helping produce Stardew Valley. I think their involvement was more on the end of localization. So Concerned Ape wrote the script, would demonstrate it to Chucklefish, and then that team would translate it into different languages. I am not super well versed on how Chucklefish runs, as the episode is about Stardew Valley, not the production company. And there also was a little bit of a falling out with the Concerned Ape and Chucklefish when it came to releasing the game on iPhones and Androids. Again, I'm not super well versed in that. Maybe I'll do a Chucklefish or I'll do a developer episode and we can talk about stuff like that, which actually sounds kind of fun. We'll say like 95% of the game was made by one person, which in the gaming industry is relatively unheard of. The only game that I can think of that has done that and has had this level of success is Undertale, which we will most certainly talk about on another show. But I'm giving a lot of games out. I'm talking about the genre called farming sim, and a lot of you might be unfamiliar with that, and I kind of count on it because Best of All was meant to be welcoming in for people who are like non-gamers, or if they are not cinemaphiles. I hate all of those terms, but this is a show for everybody. So even if you are a fan of the genre and a master of its craft, I gotta break it down for everybody else. In a farming sim, which sim stands for simulation, you take control of a farm in a small country town, typically. So you can do everything you do in a farm. You plant crops, you tend to livestock. Gaining money is really important because that can help you upgrade your tools that you have. You typically get backpacks that help you carry more stuff. That's kind of the broad strokes of it. This genre was made popular by Harvest Moon. And so when I'm saying that it's a simulation of farming, it is not in the sense to be like realistic. This is a more like, yes, you do have to tend to crops. Yes, you do have to do what a farmer would normally do, but it's meant to be kind of more fantastical. It's meant to be an imagination of what of this life is like. I mean, there are games called like Farming Simulator and like Truck Driver Simulator where that is so realistic. We're not talking about that. A little bit more cartoony. And some of you might think, okay, well, you know, I played Farmville back in 2012 on Facebook and kind of did the same thing. What makes it different? The difference is you actually have a character. It is essentially a role-playing game without the mechanics that typically fall into a role-playing game. Because your little character interacts with the town and the locals. It's kind of a trope that you get this farm because you inherit it from your grandfather who has died. And everybody in the town knew who the grandfather was. So that's kind of like what happened in Harvest Moon. That's what happens in the beginning of Stardew Valley. That's what happened at the beginning of this episode. And you could do a lot of stuff in the town. You can visit the different shops, visit the different people, which I'll get to in a moment. They have events and festivals. So like in Stardew Valley in spring, there is like the flower dance. So that day, like you wake up early, do all your farming stuff, and then you spend the rest of the day doing like little activities. And sometimes they're mini games. Sometimes it's just an opportunity to talk to people. And doing all of this rewards the player because it has like different characters have storylines, and you can, you know, become better friends with somebody and they'll open up to you more, or you'll walk into a specific part of the town and a cutscene will play. And maybe it just gives you some insight on who the characters are. It's really, really cool. This is the element that really makes the farming sim. This is what Harvest Moon created, but not perfected. And this is what people really latch onto. I mean, I've been a fan of Harvest Moon and the farming sim for years. Ever since I was a little kid, that was like the first time I would play games where I was like really attached to different characters. My sister was a real big fan. That was something that we shared like a bond over. And a big part of this series is romancing and marrying the single bachelors and bachelorettes. I think this was the first game I ever played that had romance in it. Harvest Moon. I know this episode is talking a lot about Harvest Moon, but you can't have that game without Stardew Valley. So yeah, like if you get married, then your character will like the town will talk to you differently. You get to have a wedding. When you go to like a specific festival, your spouse will sit with you or talk with you. In some games, you can start a family. You can have a baby. And then sometimes that kid will grow up. It's really great. And another feature of this game series, game genre, is that time passes. So it's not like in Animal Crossing where if you were playing at 5 o'clock at night, it is 5 o'clock in the game. In Harvest Moon and Stardew Valley, every day is about, in Stardew, it's about 13 minutes, I think. So you can, I mean, realistically, like, play for a very long time and go through like 2 months of their games. It's a good formula because it hinders on the player on how much you want to play. If you want to play just like little short bursts throughout the day, you definitely could. If you want to play, like, you go, hey, I only have time to play this game like on a Sunday, and you just like play a bunch of stuff like you would binge a TV show. So you could do that, and there's a lot of progression in that in Stardew Valley. As I was talking about, Concerned Ape's history with Harvest Moon, there is a ton of different Harvest Moon games, and a lot of them vary in quality, unfortunately, because since there is so many elements of the game, it is hard to get a farming sim right, because like, let's say you have a new Harvest Moon comes out and it is really focused on like these really interesting crops that you can make. Maybe you can like combine and fuse different fruits and vegetables. Like you can do all of this like really in-depth animal husbandry. That's really, really fun. But if the town you're in and the characters are boring, then that like really affects the other half of the game, because in your downtime of like, hey, I've watered all my crops today, you gotta have something to do. I tell you, Harvest Moon Food Factory is really cool. This is not a real game. But, you know, it doesn't have the great characters. But Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town, which is a real game, has a great storyline and great characters. But, like, the days could be too short, and it feels like you can't get anything accomplished. That's actually how I feel about Harvest Moon 64, which is my favorite Harvest Moon game. So there are so many of these games that, you know, have these really cool elements, but it's always uneven. And sometimes it's been really hard for me to recommend Harvest Moon because I'm like, hey, like, Harvest Moon 64 is great. I love the art style. It's very impactful. It's a very nostalgic game for me. But, like, yeah, the days are too short. It's kind of hard to figure out what you need to do. And then there's even some, you know, as we've kind of gotten older and gaming has broadened out to so many people, in the old Harvest Moon games, you couldn't play as a girl. You could only play as a boy because farming was seen as a masculine trait. And I remember my sister was like always annoyed with it. She would still play the games, but that was just kind of what she got. And I got a little bit of a different experience because I could play as a boy. So eventually the games later on added like the ability to have a different gender in Harvest Moon, but it has its own problems with that. And the Harvest Moon series right now is in a huge, weird cycle where the development team has split into two. So like there are Harvest Moon games that are new games with new people, but it's an old title. And there's a game series called Story of Seasons, which is the old Harvest Moon team, but they have a new name. It's so confusing. And, you know, this for the past like 10 years, this genre that I love and I know millions of other people do too, has been just like dying out. And then comes in Concerned Ape, who I didn't mean this episode to kind of be a history of the farm gaming genre, but he came in and cultivated like the very best elements from every Harvest Moon and then put them into his own game, Stardew Valley. And what's really neat is, frankly, Concerned Ape could have just like picked out the best pieces, basically made a reskinned Harvest Moon and just call it a day, and the game probably would have sold really, really well. But then he like took different elements and thought like, okay, what can be improved in this series? And then he has genuinely made a series and has made his stake in the farming sim genre, and completely outdoing the people who created it, like the masters of their own craft. It's like he just took it over. And now it's like Stardew Valley is the best Harvest Moon game. Like, to me, I was going to say there's no reason to play those games, but there's a lot of, there is a good element and enjoyment to be had. But Stardew does everything better. And what's cool is Concerned Ape adds like new stuff to it too. So it's like, I have two friends of the show, Tristan, which a lot of you know, is Chrono Carrot. He's also on Foresight Fantasy Hour, and in the Best of the Year stuff that we do. Man, when me and him got into Stardew Valley, like we got into it hard, and he really, really enjoyed that game. And recently, one of our other friends, who I call Lady Thor, she got into the game, and we were talking about like how we've been experiencing it, and we've all experienced the game in such different ways, where this is my second playthrough of the game that I've been doing now, which has inspired this episode because I got really, really like hooked on it. And like having livestock has been a big part of my my gameplay. Yeah, I have crops because it helps me earn some extra money, but like I have like a full coop of chickens that I really want to take care of, and I want that chicken coop to get bigger so I can get ducks and rabbits and dinosaurs and void chickens. So it's like some of the animals you can get later on are pretty wild, but it's like, oh, I wanted to focus on that. And then Lady Thor like she's just kind of more in it to experience the town and is like doing more social stuff. I also changed my farm to be a farm set for like fishermen. So like gathering fish and leaving nets out and like crab traps is a big part of my gameplay. And then Tristan, we were talking and he's just like, oh yeah, I haven't done any of that. Like a little bit, but like I'm in the mines. And it has this option, which is inspired by another farming sim game called Rune Factory, which is very similar to the games I've talked about before. But the big element of that is fighting monsters. And so Stardew has that. It took, that element. It's a small chunk of the game, but it's a pretty enjoyable part. I like fighting in the mines. I like, finding resources that can help me upgrade my equipment, help me find like gems that certain characters like so that I could romance them or just get to know them better. And so it's like we've all three like used and worked in the game in such different ways that it's so enjoyable. And it's all because of Concerned Ape's love of being a fan, understanding the genre, what people like, and then just making a game that he would want to play. It's so impressive. And, Concerned Ape has set a name for himself. And he said, like recently, has said that he's felt everything he's done with Stardew. This is all that he can do. He said, I've like set out my goal. And essentially he's ended development on Stardew Valley. But he set up the game to where typically Harvest Moon would have like an end point. Like, oh, once you had a kid, once you got married, it was like the game ends. Stardew doesn't. There's a point where the game kind of wraps up its main story, but you can just continue playing it on for however long you'd like. So again, he knew what people liked, why people liked the game, and he wanted to leave that option for people who just, wanted to master farming and see what the best recipes and best crop layouts are. And it's great. And so now he's announced that he's developing a new game called The Haunted Chocolatier, which looks like it's seemingly in the same world as Stardew, but it's a completely different game. In that game, you will be running a candy shop and a chocolate factory that is haunted. So you have these little ghosts that you have to hire who help, like, are your employees and stuff, which it sounds really cute and it's really delightful. Stardew has such a wonderful art style. So it's like, that's, we're all looking forward to that. I don't expect this game to come out till like 2030 because it's a one-man team. And I mean, he created one of the greatest games to come out in the past decade. So maybe Haunted Chocolatier could come out a little bit quicker, but like, it's also, there's no rush. Because here's the thing, I've talked about that he's ended development on Stardew Valley, but it's not dead by any means, because fans have kept this game alive through like fan art and merchandise. Like my friend Lady Thor, she's never played this game up until recently and was only interested in it because she really likes Animal Crossing. So it's like she's jumping in and playing it for the first time. I jumped in because there was a new a final update that added a lot of new content called 1.5. And so it's like, there's no wrong way to play this game. There's no bad time to start. It's truly a game that lets you play how you want to play. And if you play it for a little bit and you don't enjoy it, you find it a little too stressful, then it's like, okay, then it's not for you. That's fine. Or if you find something that you're like, man, I wish something could be better, there's probably a mod for it. On the PC version, many fans have added their own content into the game. A lot of it is really great, and even the Concerned Ape likes it. He's like, wow, this is really impressive. There's some quality of life options that are really cool. There are some mods that are just like straight goofy or completely unhinged and frankly very horny. So like it's optional content. It's not in the main game. So if you have a kid who's playing it on the Switch, they're not going to get a big breast mod because there's one that's out there. Not that I've used it. I'm not that type of person. But when I was researching the episode, I had to know what the different mods were out there. And I just happened to stumble upon a lot of sexy mods. They're not on my computer, but they're there. Regardless, I mean, it's a game I'm very passionate about, and this was more of a history lesson. So if you want another episode of me talking about like more in-depth gameplay of it, maybe I will. Maybe I'll throw in like Tristan, and we'll talk about like why we like Stardew Valley. We'll do like a sequel to this episode. Essentially, this is like why this game should be on your radar and why it's important to video game history, which is, you know, I enjoy that. I think that's fun. But it's a series that will always be waiting and ready for you when you find it right to jump in, which is the like perfect thesis of that game. And it's really, really sweet to see a game that is like living what they preach. What's the phrase? Practicing what they preach. It's so cool. It's such a good game. Where can you play it? Literally everywhere. I think it is on every single current modern system, and maybe some older systems, but like, if you have something that can play a video game, you're going to be able to play this game. There's the what's what and the history of Stardew Valley. If you have any other thoughts on the game or the farming sim genre as a whole, if you want to see me talk about Harvest Moon or Rune Factory, feel free to email me at mail@ScottyMeLad.com, and your letter might be even read on the show. Now, if you'd rather stay up to date on social media with me and all things Best of All, you can do that on Twitter at ScottyMeLad. The name of the YouTube channel and the name I go under when I'm producing stuff. I guess I was gonna say my production company name, but I guess it's a production company. But nevertheless, and hopefully you've taken something out of this episode and will give Stardew Valley a shot. But best of all, you were a listener, and we at ScottyMeLad thank you. And that's my closer. Gotta get back on the farm. Best of All was hosted and produced by Scott D. Forsythe, using the song Mia by Rolando Puchades from the album Canta as our intro and outro theme.